It's April 13th, 2023, and this is the Backdrop Weekly Developers Meeting. We get together every week to talk about priorities and tasks for Backdrop on a technical side of things. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet, calling in from Oakland, California. Let's see, we've got a fairly good group here today. We'll go around and do some introductions. We'll start with Luke and then go over to Tim.
I'm Luke McCormick. I'm a web project manager in San Ramon, California.
Thanks, Luke. Tim, and then Jen.
Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim, in Deerwood, Minnesota, or thereabouts. That's it.
Jen, and then Jacques.
Jen Lampton joining from Paso Robles, California.
Go ahead, Jacques.
I'm Jacques van den Benden from Belgium, and I'm occupied to make the site in Dutch with information for new ones.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jacques.
The site is backdropcms.be.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to take a look at it now. Backdropcms.be. Oh, looks very new.
Well, there's a lot of work to do.
Totally. All right, that's great. The future of a localized Belgian version of Backdrop CMS community site. That's wonderful.
And then the circle is round and started with somebody from Antwerp, and it goes back to Belgium 20 years later.
It's like Drupal's little trip to America.
From Antwerp to Boston. He lives still in Boston. Uiteraard. Does he still live in Boston? Dries?
Oh, yeah, he does actually.
Okay, and then the translation of the strings I want to do also.
Great. All right, thanks, Jacques. Appreciate you joining us today. Let's see, we'll do Justin and then Robert. If you want to do an introduction, Justin.
Justin Christopherson in Denver, Colorado. I help out mostly with the infrastructure when I can.
Justin.
Thanks.
Thanks, Justin. Robert and then Alejandro.
I'm Robert Lang, a bug folder on the internet, coming from Altadena, California. And I'm getting ready for a big event registration that makes heavy use of autocompletes, hence my interest in the topic.
Okay, excellent. Alejandro, are you available to do an introduction?
Yes, I'm in a very loud location right now, so I'll be brief. I'm Alejandro in Colorado. I'm just joining for a few minutes. I had a little bit of time. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. Before we get started, there are some announcements to be made. Tim wanted to say a thing or two about the SEO task force, which I am not familiar with, so go ahead.
So real quickly, it's informal. There was no official designation of this task force. It's a self-appointed, and basically we were I think it was in Backdrop Live, we were talking about SEO stuff, and I suggested that maybe some of us could get together during office hours and as a learning tool, look at the SEO for backdropcms.org and see if we could do some things to improve it. And because we have a couple of people in our community, including Ray James and Justin, who seem to be very interested and have some experience on this topic. And so for the last 2 weeks during the second part of the weekly office hours, we've been just sort of digging in and sort of talking about various tools, talking about Google Analytics, Google Search Console, how to use these things, and sort of applying that to backdropcms.org and saying, like, what are some things we might be able to do to generate more traffic there. So, yeah, that's basically it. It's open to anybody who wants to kind of come and hang out with us to both learn about SEO and some of the tools around it, and also to actually do work on terms of improving the SEO and for on our properties, including also the forum site. And I don't know, Jen, I sort of need to talk to you because as we come up with some ideas about content, like some things we might like to suggest for the front page, we'll want to talk about how to handle that. But I don't know that we need to do that right now.
Yeah, sure. It's great.
Yeah, where can people find this task force group?
At the weekly office, the weekly office hours, the second one. We don't have any other place just yet. We've been mentioning it in Zulip each week, but so I don't know if task force is the right name, but we're trying to just do things, anyways.
Okay,
Yep.
so Zulip asynchronously, and then the
Yes.
office hours meetings to do.
Yeah, actually, I would also recommend looking at the backdropcms.org issue queue. We've been putting notes, or dang, I forget if it's in the. Actually, I think it's in the community issue queue. We've been putting notes from our meetings, so that I'll post a note in Zulip and in the Zoom that points at the notes that we've been taking.
Okay, excellent.
Mhm.
Okay, let's see. Jen, you have some announcements as well, I think, the contrib update for this week, and anything else?
Yeah, I did also want to point out that I wrote a blog post on layouts, and I would really love somebody who has some experience with layouts in Drupal, modern Drupal, to read it and make sure I haven't gotten anything wrong. But once, and I was thinking, Tim, I don't know if you've done anything with layouts in modern Drupal, but I think Joseph might. I know he's done a lot of work on Display Suite, and he might have some experience with Drupal, modern Drupal layouts too. So yeah, I'll see if I can find him and get him to do a review for me on that. Otherwise, we have one contributed project with a new release this week. It's called Image Field Caption. That was something I used heavily in Drupal 7. I'm curious to see how it's being used for Backdrop because we have image captions in core. But it exists, which is great. So if someone needs it for whatever reason, it's now available. Let's see. I think that was it. Oh, wait, no, even more exciting. We have a new contributor this week. Eric Foy has created a theme called Modoc for Backdrop and is looking to contribute a theme. So in the last meeting, we talked about how our theme space looked a little bare. Eric might be solving that problem for us. So welcome, Eric. Thank you for contributing the theme.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'll just throw into the pile of announcements and interesting things. The thing that we were discussing about prior to the recording, that Chromatic, a Drupal agency, has started a podcast, literally a whole series of podcasts called Drupal 7 End of Life Podcast. In trying to find it, I found that Googling literally Drupal 7 EOL Chromatic is a good way of finding said podcast. And there's 4 episodes so far. That Backdrop has been mentioned in the most recent episode featuring Irina Zaks, who frequently attends Backdrop community events as well. They are also looking to reach out to some Backdrop community members to be featured on that podcast. And of those people here, like some of us have expressed some interest in being on the podcast. But if you think you would be a good person to be on that podcast, reach out via Zulip. To Tim would probably be the point person for her community activity. Yeah, that I think that's a great opportunity. Chromatic is a wonderful agency, and from what I've seen, they're having some very thoughtful conversations about what to do about Drupal 7 sites. And of course, we want to be out there as hopefully the foremost option about what to do with your Drupal 7 website.
They've mentioned Backdrop in each of the episodes so far, so it's definitely on the table for them.
Wonderful. Anybody else have comments about that before I move on? Okay. All right. Any other announcements?
Well, let's throw out that there's a couple of Drupal events, one of which we have a Drupal 7 soft landing session at MidCamp in 2 weeks. And I think there's at least 2 or 3 camps right now that are listening sessions that if people are interested in. I think Stanford is soliciting sessions, and I think Asheville is soliciting sessions. Did I see anything from Drupal Camp Colorado? Are they?
I saw something from them as well. They are
I don't know if
also,
are they soliciting sessions yet? Do you know? Anyway,
I do believe so.
okay, so you might want to check. Those are the 3 that I'm aware of. I don't know the others. MidCamp, we both Irina and I know are going to be there, and Wilbur's going to be there. So there'll be a few backdroppers there. The others I don't know yet.
I always like it when we have our little cohorts at the the Drupal events. There's always one person or more that's interested that just is like, yeah, so backdrop. And yeah, it's great to be there.
Yeah, but there's a good representation at Stanford camp already.
But
Yeah,
that campus-
yeah, I would think so. Since Stanford's actually our our biggest name, actually, I think using Backdrop publicly.
This is going to be a virtual camp, right? Stanford. I think they're doing it virtually, but they have a gathering afterwards or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, let's shift to Backdrop Core for today. So we had one issue that was submitted to the forum this week by Bugfolder, Robert, who's here with us. It's issue 6050, that there's an issue with autocompletes on mobile devices. Robert, do you want to take over the explanation of this issue and see what we can do about it?
Yeah, so basically on iPads and iPhone, iOS devices, not necessarily Android devices, autocompletes don't work. The menu doesn't appear in the right place. And I'm going to try to share screen. Let's see if this works. So I can demonstrate it. Oh, and Mozilla, let's try it again. And oh, can you all see the iPad screen?
Actually, I'm just getting black screen.
Okay, then I'm going to stop sharing. So that didn't work. But there are screenshots and a little movie in the issue. Basically, when you put your caret in the text field and you start typing, the menu appears not necessarily next to the text field. It can actually appear above or even off screen above. And if you start scrolling, the menu moves faster than the text field. So it's very confusing and to novices unusable, especially if the configuration happens to be where it has appeared off screen. They don't know that they don't know that it's not there, and they complain or get upset.
Mm-hmm.
So what it seems to be from, I've got a whole series of comments in the issue, and it looks like the insidious thing is it only happens on the actual iOS device. So if you're working on a laptop and you, like in Safari, and you say simulate a small screen, where it gives you the little iPad shaped or iPhone shaped screen, the dropdown works or the autocomplete works perfectly well on that small screen on your laptop, but it's not on the iOS device. And doing some research on blogs and so forth, it seems like iOS does, to accommodate the pop-up of the soft keyboard, iOS does some non-standard things with the position, so that, and scroll top, for example, so that position fixed as a CSS setting doesn't always work. In fact, that seemed to be the issue. And I posted in one of the comments dueling screenshots. One of the iPad screenshot that shows the menu positioned at the very top of the screen, and then the web inspector view of that same screenshot that has an inline CSS that says its top is at 191 pixels, which it definitely is not. Now, this used to work on Drupal 7, still works on Drupal 7. So if I go to I created a little, just a really simple module that puts up a page with one autocomplete on it, you know, just to have something clean, and created both Drupal and Backdrop versions of that module. And if I go to a Drupal site, generic Drupal site, on an iPad, it works fine. If I do it on the Backdrop site, it exhibits the problems on iPad. And in comparing the two, the JavaScript between old Drupal, well, current Drupal and current Backdrop, one difference is that in Backdrop now uses position fixed for the placement of the menu, and Drupal used position absolute. Also, Backdrop makes the menu a child of body, whereas Drupal makes the menu a sibling of the input that it's attached to. So those are at least two differences. And if I take the Drupal code and just backdropify it, you know, do search and replace on the different case versions of Drupal converted to Backdrop, and then use that autocomplete.js file on a Backdrop site, works great on an iPad. So again, that seems to indicate what the problem or what the issue might be, that it's that use of position fixed, and that it's because iOS is doing non-standard things with that.
Mm-hmm.
I found the old issue where those code changes were made, and there's a link now in the current issue to the old issue, and it looked like both Jen and Nate worked on the code that implemented the changes. And so part of my raising it here was to see if, digging back into the mists of 2017, if you can like recall what the motivations were, or what things, if we were to try to revert somewhat, what we'd need to be looking out for. So that's my capsule summary, and I solicit input.
I have no actual memory of that. Do you remember what the commit messages were? I think we could definitely see if there was an issue that we were like in the queue. There might not have been, because 2017. No, there should have been.
Yeah, there's an issue. It
Okay.
looks like one of the primary drivers here has to do with modal dialogues. That the old styling, when it used a pop-up adjacent to the text field inside of a modal, the pop-up would end up inside of the modal as well, and so it would either expand the modal or cause a scroll bar inside of the modal when the autocomplete popped up. And by moving it to the body level, that moves it outside of the modal and makes it so that when it gets applied to the page, it applies on top of the modal instead of inside of it. That seems to be what popped up here, and this comes up with inserting links. It looks like from the WYSIWYG, since the links have autocomplete on them. So it looks like that might have been the driver for why it got moved from being a sibling to the body, and probably also why it needs to be static positioned instead of absolute. But so I don't know, Robert, I think if we reverted it, we'd probably, you know, create it make another problem in one place and break something in the other place. Fix one place, break another. What I
Just
think
like we did here.
just like we did here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could leave things the way they are to not cause a new regression, but somehow fix the fixed positioning on iOS. Has your research led you across any solutions for fixed positioning on iOS yet?
Only a blog post where, and it's linked in the queue, but where the person says, here's like 5 problems with trying to do fixed position on iOS, and it's really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even based on history. For example, if you scroll, so again, using my little test thing, scroll to a position or click into the text field, the menu appears, maybe in the wrong place, maybe in the right place. And then you scroll a little bit and the menu definitely moves into some weird place. And then if you don't change scrolling, just tap out of the text field, then tap back into the text field, the menu appears in the right place. Now, nothing has changed in the position, but the JavaScript of position pop-up, which was getting called during scrolling or getting called on that new focus action, is different. I have no idea.
That sounds like it should be easy to fix. If it's like we have the right value, we just have to get it into the right place, surely.
Yeah. Well, what I'm seeing here from my Googling, also I refer to iOS Safari as like the new Internet Explorer 6. It is the worst. It does all of the weird janky stuff that nobody else does. But yeah,
But it's not just Safari, because on iOS, Apple requires everyone to use WebKit. So Chrome and Firefox, it's the same.
Yeah, it's all Safari. They say Firefox and Chrome, but it's really Safari.
Yeah.
It's just like skinning. Yeah. Well, what I'm seeing here is that what Safari does technically is that it uses the fixed position at the time, like with the keyboard closed, fixed works. But as soon as you open the keyboard, it switches the calculation on that from being fixed to static. So it kind of like it changes the CSS property and just ignores whatever your website has said, changes it to something else, and then it doesn't behave properly anymore. And if you click into the field, then it like redoes the calculation again. But then again, it discards the positioning and changes it from fixed to static again. And so the solution that I'm seeing here is people are saying don't use position static.
Position static or position fixed?
Hang on, let me get this
Is
right.
static
'Cause,
the default?
let's see. Do not use position fixed. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
As soon as you open the keyboard, Safari switches it to position static, and doesn't honor its fixed position. So it's interesting because I'm pretty sure the idea with using fixed position was that we wouldn't have to recalculate on scroll because it just stays in the right location. And as you scroll up and down, the browser moves that menu with the text field, which is good. But it sounds like we can't count on that for Safari. So what we did previously in Drupal 7 is it looks like we actually did recalculate the position on scroll with a little delay. And that may be what we need to go back to, is using an absolute positioning instead of fixed. Which I think actually we can keep both solutions. I think we can leave the menu outside of the sibling element, like we can put it at the body level, but we it looks like we need to switch that from being position fixed to position absolute again, and then redo the calculation on scroll. That's what I'm seeing as being our solution. But I haven't fully, this is just off the cuff. So, but I think that would be the safest thing for us to do, because that way we won't need to redo the styling and things like that. We'll just adjust the JavaScript. So yeah, Safari. I wonder if there's a way. I don't know. I don't really think I want to get into browser specific things. Like we could do feature detection of some kind and like check if the positioning is not being respected, and then add like a Safari fallback behavior. But considering how difficult it is to test on Safari, like development wise, I know for many people like myself, it's pretty much impossible, because you can't run the iOS emulator unless you're on a Mac to actually use it with the virtual keyboard and everything like that. So I don't like iOS specific fixes. So let's try to fix something, like come up with a replacement that uses position absolute that works on desktop, make the pull request, then from the sandbox, we can then verify if it applies to iOS, which I think it probably, fix will probably work both places, as long as we avoid position fixed. So yeah, does that at least give you some thoughts, Robert?
Yeah.
Are you looking for development help on this?
I'd appreciate it. I'm going to have, in about 3 weeks, I'm going to have 400 people trying to register using various forms with autocompletes on them. And some fraction of them will be using iPads and phones. So I'll take all the help I can get.
Okay, excellent. Okay. All right. That was actually the only topic that we have for today that was brought up in the forum. Does anyone have any other topics they'd like to discuss specifically? Go ahead, Tim.
I mean, one, just in general, if people are aware of issues that could use some help to get in, we have a feature freeze in 2 weeks. I've been trying to dig up a few issues that just needed testing and comment on them. I think a couple of them are moving forward. I found a new bug, which is not a big one, and if anybody can look at it, I think 2 people confirmed it. If you go to the permissions page, a bunch of the descriptions have little more links, and those more links just don't work. They don't do anything, and so this is not it looks like a pretty trivial problem, but it's also fairly prominent because it's right there in the user interface that we have these links that just don't do anything. I tried it on a demo site, a PR sandbox site, and locally. It didn't work on any of them, and I think that 2 other people, I think Olaf and was it Alejandro? Did you confirm it? So if I don't know if anybody has, okay, somebody else did. If anybody has time to look at it, I'll find the issue number, but it's right. It's one of the most recently created issues. So I don't know that we need to talk about it right now, but I thought I'd mention it.
Okay, great, thanks. Justin, do you have something you wanted to bring up?
The sites are still not all running on PHP 8. And I feel like we need to organize some development effort to get it there instead of just waiting for me or Jen or someone to do it. I don't know, is that fair to say?
Yeah, and you're talking is it it's not just upgrading the servers, it's that the servers can't be upgraded because of the PHP software on them? Is that the problem?
We at least need to run all of our sites on PHP 8 and like catch and fix any PHP warnings that are thrown by contrib modules before we can just update the server. I do think that our biggest roadblock is the localized website, which won't be a roadblock for long. Most of the backdrop sites should be much easier to get running because core runs pretty well on PHP 8, but there are some contrib modules that still have some issues. I think XML sitemap is the big one.
Oh boy, yeah, XML sitemap. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't want it to become a security thing at some point, you know, where we look irresponsible because we're so far behind, you know, but so that's my primary concern. But I think that there's just a few functions like in some of the themes that need to be changed out, and those will probably come to life. In my ticket that I have open, there was a list of the sites that are pending improvements, and
Great.
so I just didn't want that to, it's kind of slipping through the cracks a little bit. Sorry, I haven't been so available to push it forward, but the, you know, a little more than half the sites are already running PHP, so I have it configured so each site is configured to run the version it needs. So we can just update them one by one, and the beta servers configure that way too.
Oh, that's great.
Great. Yeah.
Yes, you know, kind of this might be going off the deep end a little bit, talking about our websites. But Justin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this about what the acquisition of Linode means for our projects. So Linode is where we host our flagship website and all of our other websites. Linode has been very kind to us in providing credits for an open source project such as ourselves. But Linode was acquired by Akamai earlier this year. And then starting at the beginning of this month, I think it was, they across the board raised all of their rates 20% to everybody. And that doesn't affect us other than it uses our promotional credits faster than before. But I don't know. I'm really concerned already, and I'm just wondering, Justin, if you have any suggestions for hosting providers or how you feel about Linode in the past and now.
Yeah, well, I remember when Rackspace purchased SliceHost, where I had my fortune based at that time. And that was a disaster when they enforced managed only VMs for $100 a month or whatever, and it was a deal breaker. So I hope that Akamai doesn't do something like that, but I think they are minded to do that because that's kind of how they operate. They want to introduce managed services as much as possible, but I don't know what they have in store. You know, of course, it's $1 billion company. They're not just gonna slam the brakes on it, you know, but I imagine they have some changes coming.
Yeah, I think so too. The real concern I have is that Akamai has not been particularly kind to open source in the past. Akamai is a proprietary CDN, like their software products are all proprietary, as far as I know. And I just don't see their relationship as being quite so positive towards open source as it was for Linode when they were independent.
Yeah.
Also, I foresee a brain drain out of Linode. Like, Linode was a nerd-driven culture. Like, if you ever talked to people at at a conference that were running the booth at Linode, it was one of the best experiences because they did not have salespeople, and you just it would be so quiet, and you would be like, "So tell me about Linode," and they're like, do you have any problems that we can talk about? Like, because it's like they were engineers that were manning the booths. And so they couldn't really market themselves. But if you had a website problem or a hosting problem, they were going to be like, oh yeah, let's talk tech.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was one of the things I loved about Linode. It was just they had the best support. And maybe they still do for the time being.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh,
So there's we can keep an eye on Amazon Light Sail. We'll have a similar product offering as what we have now, and maybe DigitalOcean is more friend. Of course, Amazon's not going to sponsor us, I don't think, but that would be a miracle. But they maybe like I know some folks at Google that might offer maybe even. Or we can check with DigitalOcean. I think is kind of friendly to some open source projects.
does
Yeah.
Fastly have a hosting offering yet?
I don't
No.
think they do.
Okay. It might not be. They might not want to do that.
Yeah, I really like Fastly. They all talk about a company that also is tech driven and not very good at selling themselves. Yeah. Well, the thing that drives me most nuts about Fastly is that you have to go through sales in order to get an account with them. There's no like sign up, which I think they're just losing out on 90% of their business because of that. But hey.
90% of their developer business, their enterprise business really likes that hand-holdy contact. So
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are we looking for in a host? I mean, so one of the things that I think distinguished Linode is that it was like a bare bones here. You do, we just provide the hardware and you manage it yourself. Is that why we were there, or we were there just because it was free?
I think we were there because we really liked Linode. Just as Nate said, there wasn't a lot of junk between you and your server in terms of sales when you sign up or what have you. I don't think managed hosting is bad. I think that would take some burden off of Justin, which he might appreciate. I just think that it's usually more expensive. It's not necessarily now. It was back then when we were shopping. So I don't think that should be a requirement. I feel like I would be more concerned about like choosing a company that we want to support like ethically. So I know like Google and Amazon have plenty of server and could give it to us for free and not notice anything. But I'm like a little uncomfortable about like telling people that we're on AWS. I feel like, I mean, it's probably fine, but there's plenty of people who are on that who have great ethics. But I think it would be really neat if we could find some like open source specific or like GPL enthusiast hosting company. I'm not sure that exists anymore. They've probably all been bought by Akamai. But I think that would be nice if we could find something like that.
Yeah, I wonder if we should look into Oregon State University Open Source Lab.
Oh yeah.
OSU OSL. Am I incorrect that they host Drupal.org?
They used to.
Ooh.
I don't know if they still do.
Yeah, it's
that was a hardware situation, right? Where they had a box in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's like a service they offer. That might have just been something they did for Drupal. But I don't know. It's worth asking.
Yeah, they
hosting. They do have hosting.
Yeah, they offer hosting for open source projects.
Ooh. Okay. Well, I'll definitely reach out to them and see.
Yeah, they could be a really good candidate for us because, times have changed since we set up backdropcms.org. We had concerns about using something like Pantheon at the time because backdropcms.org does things that are unusual for a Backdrop website. The hosting of things like telemetry, project usage, update status. These things are web services that, Backdrop websites are calling home to check for updates and things like that. And the setup of those requires special configuration, htaccess rewrites and things of that nature to make it so that they work. And Pantheon doesn't support htaccess rewrites. Maybe there'd be some way to do it now, because at the time they didn't have Fastly in front of their services. And so now it's possible to do some crazy things, but I'm not sure we'd want to get into that. It probably would involve some special help from something like Pantheon. So I kind of like talked myself in and out of Pantheon really quick there.
Look, I think strengthening our strategic partnership with Pantheon would be kind of big. So I'm of the climbing to bed with them school.
Yeah, I think we could host our websites there, but we can't host all our other stuff there.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, it might be worth talking to them anyway and being
Right.
like, "Hey, we like you. Do you like us?"
Right.
But
Can we be
OS
friends?
OSU is an interesting thing. Thanks, Jock. OSU is an interesting option because it's like VPS hosting. Like we get to do whatever we want,
Right.
similar to Linode.
Well,
But
I mean,
but
that's not what their hosting page said.
oh, okay.
But I don't know if their hosting page is up to date either, right? Or like they could have a different deal with everyone. Like who knows? But
Yeah,
yeah,
it says that
they're
they can do managed or unmanaged or virtualization. That's what I'm seeing on their details.
yeah, but it
page.
says we currently support hosting sites requiring languages such as PHP, Python, and Ruby. We don't support every application. So it sounds like there are some limits on what you can do with your machines. So that would be fine for us, but it does sort of indicate that it's not just free for all once you get in there.
Yeah, it could be interesting, just me thinking on behalf of Justin here, that the managed hosting would make it so that potentially we'd get some additional help managing the servers from OSU. And Justin, potentially you might find some of your people. You might get sucked into managing other open source projects.
Oh,
no.
Well, it hasn't been a burden for me. But I don't want it to be a burden on the project if I'm not around.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's always been my concern, is that it's shared enough with the group that, when I'm out sick or whatever, somebody's available, so, and I think we have that for the most part. Yeah.
Right.
Or at least we did for sure, like when Jeff was around.
Right.
So, but I mean, you guys do pretty good too. So, we haven't really had any. Luckily, since we've upgraded and stuff to Debian, we haven't really had any troubles, I think. So,
Actually, now that you mention it, I can't even recall the last time we had an outage. I mean, it's been years. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it has been great.
yeah, it just runs. And Backdrop is pretty lightweight and lean and stuff. So, and we have some precautions on there. I have had some little attacks from, North Korea and Russia and stuff like everybody else, but the monitoring that we have going is improved considerably, so I can catch those before it goes down. But most recently, I upgraded to Nagios 4, so now we're monitoring the SSL certificates and the load better. So it's more proactive.
I'm open to either, and I understand these arguments, but I also want to reinforce sort of Luke's point about building relationships with public-facing providers, right? And to the extent that we could, if it helped us with our relationship with Pantheon, I think that would be nice. If it doesn't, then I wouldn't bother to go there. I mean, their current setup where they don't even mention us on their front page would not incline me to use them. I think Platform SH does include us, and the more prominent we are on those services, that's just good for the overall community. And so, to the extent that this could help us and reduce the, we're targeting users that aren't managing their own servers, right? We really are targeting users that can use tools like Pantheon or like other shared hosting, and in a lot of cases, we try to use the tools that our users are, or that the people using Backdrop are using, and this is an opportunity to do that. But on the other hand, personally, I hosted with Linode, and I'm happy, I would go that direction for my own hosting. So
yeah, right now it's fear of the unknown is the thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would bet that we probably have one renewal in the pocket. Like, we haven't asked the new management for
Right.
support yet, and I bet that we'll get one round before they change their mind. They'll be like, "Oh, yeah, here you go. By the way, next time, not free." That's what I'm guessing.
Mhm.
That would be the approach I would use if I was managing Linode, at least. So, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough about that topic. We're actually out of time already, but I do want to reiterate what Tim said. We only have 2 weeks until feature freeze for the 125 version. My personal initiative is I'm going to try to get my issue 2615, the text formats per field instance, get that moving. Finally, that has a pull request, but it hasn't been touched in a long time. We do have a number of RDBC issues for 125, which is great. So we're moving forward on those. I also wanted to briefly mention the add context handling to views blocks issue 5995, where our contributors Rick Bargerhoff and S. Samorana are working together to get that moving, and it looks like that's been going really pretty well. There's test coverage now. Gregory has been helping out. Our Piano is also helping out. Thank you, although he left the meeting. So yeah, looks like everything is moving forward there. Kiem Laluno is there as well. I'm really pleased to see our community members stepping up to help our new contributors. So yeah, I think that's going well. Okay. Let's see. Other things, Robert. I'll take a look at your sticky thing and see if we can see if that's easy. I'm hoping, if it's just some CSS positioning, if I can get it working on desktop, I think that won't be too difficult. So
Thank you.
okay, well, let's close for today. Thank you all for being here as always, and thank you out there that watch us on the internet. So see you folks next
Bye.
week.